In a quiet suburban neighborhood, one garage light stays on long after everyone else is asleep. Inside, a man tinkers alone. Not because he is strange, but because a question won't let him rest. His neighbors call him odd, his wife calls him distant, his son calls him always busy, but he doesn't think he's doing anything special. He's just trying to understand why things work. That quiet why, the one that refuses to go silent, is where today's video truly begins. Some people are wired to keep asking, not for praise, not for answers, just because they have to. That compulsion to understand is beautiful, but it comes with a cost most people never talk about. The cost is a specific kind of loneliness, not the sad kind, but the quiet, searching kind. Today we go inside that loneliness, not to romanticize it, but to understand it honestly. And what we find might surprise you, because the truth is more complicated than the story we're told. In 2016, researchers Norman Li and Satoshi Kanazawa published a fascinating analysis on intelligence and happiness. They looked at how social density, being around people, often affects well-being across different individuals. For most people, living close to community and meeting friends regularly increases their sense of happiness. But for individuals with higher cognitive ability, that same pattern weakened, or even reversed. Fascinating data, but before you use it to justify avoiding everyone, read the fine print. This study was challenged heavily by other scientists for its methodology and interpretation. It couldn't distinguish between someone choosing solitude and someone unable to connect effectively. One chooses depth. The other hasn't yet learned how to bridge the gap between their mind and others. Science gives us data, but data without context is just a comfortable story we tell ourselves. The real question this research raises is not, are smart people lonelier? It's why and what kind. There's a difference between productive solitude and isolation disguised as intellectual preference. And most of us, if we're honest, have stepped through both doors at different points in our lives. Now here's the part of the video that's harder to hear, but more valuable than comfort. Not all loneliness in highly intelligent people is a noble burden. Sometimes it's an undeveloped skill. People with complex minds often set very high standards for conversation, then feel let down constantly. But that standard sometimes measures patience, not depth. And patience can be built. Psychologist Adam Grant noted that exceptionally smart people often struggle not because they're too bright, but because they haven't learned to translate their complexity into language others can actually reach. That's not the world's failure to understand you. That's a skill, and like all skills, it can grow. The real question is not, why doesn't anyone understand me? It's, have I actually tried in their language? There's a subtle trap that catches many deep thinkers. They listen to respond, not to understand. While someone else is speaking, they're already building counter-arguments inside their own minds. The result is two parallel presentations happening at once, not a real human connection at all. Real connection doesn't start with shared ideas. It starts with acknowledged feelings, or even simple ones. Loneliness grows not from being misunderstood, but from never fully showing the part that could be understood. So if the problem isn't your complexity, but your translation, here's one practical place to start. Researcher Celeste Headlee, in her book We Need to Talk, identified a specific pattern in how thinkers listen. High complexity minds tend to listen to respond, building their next point before the other person finishes. Try something small. Next time someone speaks, wait until they fully finish before forming any response. Then, instead of responding to their logic, ask about their feeling. How did that affect you? Not what do you think about that, but how did that land for you? What did it feel like? That one shift moves a conversation from intellectual sparring into something genuinely human and real. People on your wavelength will meet you there. Others will appreciate being heard in a new way. You don't have to lower your standards. You have to widen your access on. That's a very different thing. Dr. Nicholas Epley's research found we consistently underestimate how much strangers want real conversation. Most people are hungry for depth, too. They're just waiting for someone brave enough to go there first. You can be that person, not by being smarter in the room, but by being more honest in the room. Back to the man in the garage in Pasadena, what made him truly lonely wasn't his complex mind. It was that he never learned to speak about what was happening inside him in ways others could touch. He could explain how a combustion engine works for 40 minutes. He could explain how a combustion engine works for 40 minutes without stopping or losing anyone. But he didn't know how to tell his son. I do this because I want to understand the world deeply enough to protect you. The loneliness of the deep thinker rarely lives in the gap between them and the world. It lives in the gap between what they think and what they actually say out loud to another person. Closing that gap, finding words for the interior, that is the real work, and it is worth doing. The depth you carry is real, but depth has no value until it connects with something outside itself, a person, a moment, a shared understanding. These are the things that give the depth its meaning. That's not weakness. That's the whole point. Connection is what makes the complexity matter at all. You don't need anyone to confirm that you're intelligent or that your mind is valuable. This video wasn't made to do that. It was made to ask a harder and more useful question. If you recognize yourself in the man in the garage, ask yourself this honestly. Have you actually let anyone try to understand you? Or have you decided in advance they couldn't? The complexity inside you is real, and it is worth protecting. But it is not worth hiding forever. Solitude is a laboratory. Use it to refine, but don't let it become the only place you ever live. Your mind is not a burden, but it is also not a reason to stop reaching toward other human beings. The most important conversations you'll ever have won't start with intelligence. They'll start with honesty. Keep asking why, keep going deep, but bring someone with you every once in a while. That's not a compromise. That's how the depth finally becomes something bigger than just yourself. Intelligence without connection is just a very elaborate way of being alone in a crowded room. Solitude chosen freely is peace. Solitude chosen by default is a habit that quietly becomes a wall. The watchers on the walls see the storm coming, but who do they tell and how when it arrives? Speaking in metaphors because literal language feels small. That's beautiful, but is anyone listening? The why that drives you is a gift, but it needs a who beside it to become something meaningful. Even the most independent mind was shaped by someone, a teacher, a book, a single honest conversation. Your silence is not empty, but don't let the fear of being misunderstood keep it silent forever. At the end of every deep thought is a human being hoping someone else has been there too. If this video made you think differently about your own solitude, that's the whole point. Leave a comment. Has your solitude ever been a choice or a habit you mistook for a choice? Subscribe to Draw Human Nature. Every week we look honestly at the patterns most people never name. Share this with someone who spends a lot of time in their own mind. They might need to hear this. Until next time, keep asking why. And let someone ask it alongside you once in a while. A